Oh my god. All right, my friends, 'tis the season, holiday spirits. We got a Python Green 2021 Porsche Cayman S with a PDK against a red 2016 Alfa Romeo 4C Spider that only comes with the DCT. Now, this is not the comparison you asked for, but this actually makes more sense than you may think. Both are mid-engine, both are turbocharged. Generally, the 4C will be right around 45 to 50K. This one will be usually above 50K, but this has such high mileage because the owner, Austin, is quite a car enthusiast in the best way possible. He's got the Gulf livery here on his key. He's done like 30 track days, 30 autocrosses, 97,000 miles on this 2021 Porsche Cayman. That's what I love to see. Now remember, the 718s, that's when they transitioned to a flat 4 that's turbocharged. Here we're powered by a 2.5 liter turbo flat 4, making 350 horsepower, 309 pound-feet of torque. They're rated around 3,100-ish pounds, but with PDK, it's gonna be a little bit closer to 3,200 pounds. As for mods, we have Ohlins R&T coilovers, Tarett GT3 front lower control arms with rubber inners. They used to have the monoballs, but they wore out. And before that, he had the rubbers, but those also wore out because, again, he's putting a lot of miles and driving this car hard, as he should. RSS solid thrust arm caster adjustable bushings in the GT3 lower control arms, which prevents toe steer and front-end wandering when the OEM rubber bushings deflect under hard braking. Alignment is moderate for both mixed track and daily use. We have negative 2.3 degrees of camber in the front and negative 1.8 in the rear. Girodisc brake rotors all around. Ferodo DS1.11 brake pads, which are more track-focused than the DS2500s that a lot of people are running. And of course, these Apex VS5 RS wheels. 18 by 9 with 46 offset in the front, 18 by 10.5 with 44 offset in the rear, and those are wrapped in RE71 RS tires, 245 section width in the front, 275 in the rear. Porsche Cayman interiors. They're familiar, but they're so good. The build quality, the simplicity, the driver-focused nature. We're sitting nice and low. Love the newer design steering wheels, although this leather here is quite firm and a little bit slippery. We don't have PASM with the optioned out here in this car, but that makes sense. He went with Ohlins R&T coilovers. But we're gonna engage sport mode. Porsche Sport exhaust is engaged. You can instantly hear those valves open. Put this in manual mode. Red line around 7,200 RPM. With the Turbo 4, you're not getting that same flat 6 howl, but it has this throatier sound to it. Really impressed by these coilovers and the way that he's dialed them in. The way this whole car is tuned is really brilliant for dual duty. The body control here combined with the comfort, that trade-off is just completely nailed. PDK letting us downshift into first. Traction kicking in there. I like that he's added a bit more rubber to the front end. It's feeling sharper and willing to hold on more than a more stock setup Cayman S. Brakes were actually a little bit too grabby when I got into the car, but very quick to adjust. The initial little bit of travel, you don't have much bite, and then all of a sudden it ramps up quite a bit, and that's why when I first got in, I wasn't actually even smooth with the brakes. Now I'm getting used to it. This would feel great on track though. If it is a little bit unnatural on street, you don't have that same high resolution of modulation as you get on the pedal. When you try to modulate it a little bit, you get a greater braking force than you might expect. And they also squeak, but you gotta remember, this guy tracks his car a ton. PDK is flawless as always. And these modern Porsches, they just keep getting it better and better, sharper and smoother. So instantaneous. The turbo lag is actually pretty minimal with this generation. Now, of course, at lower RPMs, you'll feel it more, but once you're spooled up and once you're doing some spirited driving, the turbo lag is pretty minimal. The bigger trade-off, I mean, sure, the throttle response is absolutely sharper in the naturally aspirated flat 6, GTS 4.0 and 981. But the bigger trade-off, I would argue, is the engine note. It doesn't have that same emotionality and visceral nature from a naturally aspirated flat 6. But you take that away, this car is just so balanced, so dialed. I'm gonna go into auto, see how it handles shifting in sport mode. Once you start pushing it, you really appreciate how aggressive these brakes are. As long as you're fine with that trade-off, with a bit of squeak and squeal. Going on date night, your lady might not appreciate that, but I've lived that life before. The owner, Austin, has taken an already incredibly balanced platform, balanced chassis of the 718, the 982, and he's modified this in a way that adds additional confidence. The way this thing is, the suspension here, is so well dialed. Road and track is, you know, it's well regarded, but having it set up in this way, this is one of the better examples, no doubt. It has that planted feel, maintaining ride comfort and body control, and it just feels so natural in the canyons. I imagine it would not feel too soft on the track the way that it's currently set up. The RE71 RS tires wrapped around those wider wheels gives this car more confidence, but keep in mind that it won't be as playful, and the Cayman already isn't very playful on street. But if you're going to be taking this to track, this is what you want. And at least Porsche have tuned this turbocharged engine in a way where, for a turbocharged engine, it behaves much closer to a naturally aspirated. Sure, you're going to get more mid-range torque here, and it's not going to quite have that same level of build and crescendo as a naturally aspirated flat 6, but it doesn't die off at the top end like many other turbo engines that you'd come to expect. Now it's time for the 2016 Alfa Romeo 4C Spider. Here we're powered by an inline 4 that's also turbocharged, but this is 1.7 liters, making 237 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, made it to a 6-speed DCT. Whereas, keep in mind, the PDK is 7-speed, but the differences are less about the number of gears and more in other ways, which we'll get to as we drive. We have unassisted, aka manual steering, which is not really something you see from a car from 2016. I mean, the Lotus Elise, this, not many other cars made in the last 10 years that have unassisted steering. But what's really unique here is that the chassis is an actual carbon tub, which normally would only weigh 143 pounds, and it has aluminum front and rear subframes with a lower center of gravity than even a Lotus Elise. How impressive is that? But in the US, they made it a bit more thick because of safety regulations. So now it weighs around 2,500 pounds, and that's because there's extra bracing and strengthening that was required to meet the crash regulations. That includes some aluminum inserts in the carbon fiber chassis. That's a 220-pound increase just for getting this car in the US, which, I mean, pros and cons. It takes away from the driving experience, but I guess in the US we do have these larger SUVs and whatever, so if you get in an accident, hopefully you're a little bit safer with the US spec versus the Euro spec. We have double wishbone suspension in the front, strut in the rear, and the Porsche Cayman, it's strut in all four corners. You don't normally see double wishbone front and strut rear though. Normally you would see multi-link rear. I'm guessing that's because of packaging issues, because the engine is right there, right? So probably not having enough space, hence they went with strut rather than double wishbone or multi-link. Market value is again around 45 to 50K, and in terms of mods, we have Alfaworks suspension blocks, which improves on-center feel, turn-in, and reduces the wander that these cars are known for. We also have an Alfaworks tune, taking the power from 240 up to 280 horsepower. Got these sweet Titan 7 forged wheels wrapped in PS4S rubber, and that's 225 in the front, 255 in the rear. We have a Euro Compulsion V2 intake that you're definitely going to hear the difference. Girodisc 2-piece rotors, GMS brake pads, and a GMS turbo charge pipe. Full mod list, as always, is down in the description. First time behind a 4C, I'm pretty excited. You got to be careful when you're getting in and out, especially when you're getting out. Do not hold on to that at all. You want to hold down here if you need a helping hand. Oh. Really thick sills with that carbon tub. Now, getting into the interior, the seating position is actually not bad at all. I like how much the wheel telescopes, although these the paddles, they have teeny tiny actuation. They feel very, very plasticky. And also, because of where they're located, you can't really grab the wheel properly. Your hand just kind of fits right here, and as you're going to find out, the steering is quite heavy, which makes it kind of an awkward experience. We have first, neutral, reverse, auto, and manual. So we'll go into first. That's quite funny, rather than just drive, as you see in other cars. Turning radius is garbage. Steering, very heavy. Ooh. Unassisted. And those turbo wastegate noises are so pronounced because of the intake. If you guys are watching with earphones, I use these binaural microphones so it feels like you're sitting in the car and you'll hear it over your right shoulder. So loud. But wow, the steering is completely alive. It's not quite as high resolution as the Lotus Elise, which is also unassisted rack. Now I'm getting a lot of turbo lag at these lower RPMs, so I'm actually gonna go into manual mode. Keep the revs a little bit higher. We're in natural. Let's actually go up to dynamic, which is this button here. We're gonna hold that up. Goes to dynamic, hold it again. We wait for it to turn yellow. And we're in race. Woohoo! Man. Oh my god. Compared to the Porsche Cayman, completely different experience. You may think that, hey, on paper both are mid-engine. We're gonna go back into, okay, we are still in race actually. We'll stay here in race mode. Oh my god. Not quite as high resolution as a Lotus Elise, but still getting a decent amount of texture. The steering weight is very pronounced, very heavy, which I wouldn't normally mind, actually. I think I can tolerate heavier steering more so than other people. Like, it normally never bothers me if it's an unassisted rack. But the issue I have here is that you can't get your hands around the actual steering wheel and get a good grip because of these paddles being right there, and That makes it a little bit awkward. Transmission here is not anywhere close to as sophisticated as the PDK and the Porsche. Rougher shifts. Rejecting my downshift there quite conservatively, whereas in the Porsche, it'll give it to you. It's decently quick, not as smooth and as quick as the PDK. But this is a car that I probably wouldn't even want to take on the track. It's not confidence-inspiring and natural like a Cayman. Sure, you have a low center of gravity, you have that mid-engine balance, but you really got to work at the wheel. Brakes are quite firm here, just like in the Porsche Cayman. A little bit firmer, actually. I like the modulation here better. Higher resolution, I would say. But man, you get a lot more turbo lag here. The turbo was very front and center in the driving experience. Dude, these noises are insane. So Italian, so just emotional and visceral and unique, right? From the first gear button to these blow-off valve noises. The engine feels far more turbocharged compared to that Cayman. Where in the Cayman, it's trying to mimic a naturally aspirated engine, whereas here, it is unabashedly, completely turbo. You have more of that low-end torque, and as it builds, it feels turbocharged. It doesn't build like a naturally aspirated engine or like what the 718 is trying to do. Suspension here is also not quite as sophisticated as the Cayman. It's great, it's firm, you're getting a lot of feedback from the road, but the ride comfort is a little bit compromised. It can be a bit crashy at times. But you're getting a ton of driving experience for the money. This feels so special. You don't see a lot of these on the road either. I'm definitely laughing more at this than in the Cayman. A much more involved, encompassing experience here compared to that Cayman. The Cayman is absolutely the car I would pick if I was going to be, let's go back into auto, getting all these beeps. I don't even know what's going on. But the Cayman is the car that I would definitely pick. There we go, I think I'm in neutral. All right, good. It's the car I would pick if I wanted a dual duty vehicle, but this car, if you want a toy to just really enjoy on the weekends or as your second car that you're not going to be driving as much, this gives you a much more visceral, emotional experience. There, you're very compromised though. The Cayman is so well-rounded, it's so good, it's so balanced, the interior is nice, way better fit and finish. The seats here are not fantastic, you actually tend to slide quite a bit. They look like they would have more bolstering, but you sit in them and not nearly as comfortable or supportive as the Cayman. But you're not, I mean, you're getting something that's a little bit more unique. It feels a little bit more bespoke. The details, I would say, are not quite there. So the paddle actuation, as example, the shifting isn't going to be as smooth or immediate. But you get this exposed carbon fiber. You get this very unique look. You get this interior that also is, you know, one of a kind, very unique. These little quirks and features here. I love comparisons like these where there's no clear winner because they're each trying to do something very different, and this doesn't give you as much confidence when you're pushing it compared to the Cayman, which is so balanced, so predictable. This has a very communicative chassis, but it's also weighing 2,500 pounds now versus the Euro spec, which saves more than 200 pounds. So I'm curious how that would change the driving experience, but I'm glad he has these Alfaworks suspension blocks, which do at least help with the confidence with the front end. My friends, let me know which one would you pick for around 50K, the Alfa Romeo 4C Spider or a Porsche Cayman S 718. Leave a comment down below, and if you want your car reviewed, visit us on jabalandcars.com, fill out the form on the homepage, and we'll be in touch. Big thanks to Austin and Henry, the owners, for letting me review their cars, and big thanks to Fenton from Zygreen Channel for making this review possible. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in that next one.